Most people think belly fat is caused by eating too many calories. But what if the real problem is happening while you sleep? There's a powerful hormone that can quietly switch your body into fat storage mode at night, and if this hormone stays elevated for too long, your body begins storing dangerous visceral fat around the abdomen, even if you're trying to eat healthy. That hormone is cortisol. Cortisol is often called the stress hormone, but its effects go far beyond stress. It directly influences blood sugar, insulin levels, inflammation, appetite, metabolism, and even the quality of your sleep. Under normal conditions, cortisol follows a healthy circadian rhythm. It should be higher in the morning to help you wake up and gradually decrease throughout the day so your body can relax and repair itself at night. But in many people, this pattern becomes completely reversed. Late night stress, poor sleep, emotional tension, excessive screen exposure, nighttime eating, and even hidden inflammation can cause cortisol to remain elevated at night. And when cortisol rises at the wrong time, the body enters survival mode. Instead of burning fat while you sleep, your metabolism shifts towards storing energy, especially around the belly. One of the biggest reasons this happens is because cortisol raises blood glucose. When cortisol increases, the liver responds by releasing more sugar into the bloodstream. This was designed as a survival mechanism to prepare the body for danger. But when this process happens every night, the pancreas must release more insulin to control the excess glucose. Over time, this repeated cycle creates insulin resistance. Insulin resistance is one of the strongest drivers of abdominal fat accumulation. When insulin stays elevated, the body loses access to stored fat as a fuel source. Fat burning slows down, and the body becomes more efficient at storing calories instead of using them. The abdominal area is especially sensitive to these hormonal signals because belly fat cells contain a high number of cortisol receptors. This is why chronic nighttime cortisol elevation often leads to stubborn belly fat that becomes very difficult to lose. Many people reduce calories, exercise more, and still notice that their waistline keeps expanding. The problem is not always calorie intake. The problem may be hormonal timing. High nighttime cortisol also damages sleep quality, and this creates another metabolic problem. During deep sleep, the body produces growth hormone, a critical hormone for fat metabolism, muscle repair, and cellular regeneration. But cortisol suppresses deep sleep and reduces growth hormone production. As a result, the body loses one of its most powerful overnight fat-burning mechanisms. At the same time, sleep deprivation increases hunger hormones like ghrelin while lowering leptin, the hormone responsible for fullness and appetite control. This hormonal imbalance increases cravings for sugar and refined carbohydrates the next day. So elevated nighttime cortisol not only promotes fat storage during sleep, but it also increases overeating during the day. Another hidden effect of cortisol is inflammation. Chronically elevated cortisol disrupts immune balance and increases inflammatory chemicals in the body. This low-grade inflammation interferes with thyroid function, slows metabolic rate, and worsens insulin resistance. The liver may also begin accumulating fat, which further damages metabolic health. Nutrient deficiencies can make this entire cycle worse. Low magnesium levels are strongly associated with poor stress regulation and disrupted sleep. Magnesium helps calm the nervous system and supports healthy cortisol rhythms. Deficiencies in vitamin D and potassium may also affect sleep quality, insulin sensitivity, and hormone balance. One of the most overlooked triggers for nighttime cortisol is eating too late in the evening, especially consuming sugar or processed carbohydrates before bed. These foods create rapid spikes in blood glucose and insulin, forcing the body into metabolic instability during a time when it should be recovering and repairing itself. The body was designed to heal at night, not to remain trapped in a constant stress response. Supporting healthy cortisol rhythms is one of the most powerful ways to improve fat burning, reduce belly fat, stabilize blood sugar, and restore metabolic health. Simple changes can make a major difference. Reducing late-night eating, improving sleep quality, lowering chronic stress, increasing magnesium-rich foods, avoiding excessive caffeine late in the day, and exposing the body to natural morning sunlight can help reset cortisol patterns naturally. When cortisol returns to its normal rhythm, the body becomes metabolically flexible again. Insulin levels stabilize, inflammation decreases, growth hormone improves, and the body can finally access stored fat for energy instead of continuously storing it around the abdomen. If you constantly wake up with stubborn belly fat, strong cravings, low energy, or unexplained weight gain, the real problem may not be what you eat during the day. It may be what your body is doing with insulin at night. One of the most damaging metabolic patterns is an insulin spike before bedtime, because when insulin stays elevated during sleep, your body shifts into fat storage mode instead of fat burning mode. Insulin is one of the most powerful hormones in the human body. Its primary role is to regulate blood sugar levels by moving glucose from the bloodstream into the cells. But insulin also acts like a storage hormone. Whenever insulin is elevated, the body receives a signal to store energy and stop burning fat. This becomes extremely important at night because nighttime is supposed to be a metabolic repair phase. During sleep, the body should naturally lower insulin levels, activate fat burning, repair tissues, stabilize hormones, and restore energy systems. But when someone eats sugar, processed carbohydrates, desserts, cereal, bread, chips, or late-night snacks before bed, blood glucose rises rapidly. In response, the pancreas releases insulin to manage the excess sugar. The problem is that insulin can remain elevated for several hours after eating, especially in individuals who already have insulin resistance. This means the body enters sleep with high insulin levels circulating through the bloodstream. As long as insulin remains elevated, fat burning is essentially blocked. This happens because insulin suppresses lipolysis, the process where stored body fat is broken down and used for energy. Instead of accessing stored fat overnight, the body continues storing excess glucose as fat tissue, particularly in the abdominal area. Belly fat cells are highly sensitive to insulin, which is why late-night eating often leads to gradual waist expansion over time. What makes this even more dangerous is that nighttime insulin spikes directly interfere with metabolic flexibility. A healthy metabolism should be able to switch between burning glucose and burning fat depending on the body's needs. But chronically elevated insulin traps the body in glucose dependency. The body becomes less efficient at using stored fat for fuel, which leads to constant hunger, fatigue, and stubborn weight gain. The liver also plays a major role in this process. When excessive carbohydrates are consumed late at night, the liver converts extra glucose into triglycerides through a process called de novo lipogenesis. These fats can accumulate inside the liver itself, contributing to fatty liver disease and worsening insulin resistance even further. At the same time, elevated nighttime insulin affects other critical hormones involved in appetite and metabolism. Leptin, the hormone responsible for signaling fullness and satiety, becomes less effective when insulin remains chronically high. This condition is known as leptin resistance. As a result, the brain struggles to recognize when the body has enough stored energy. Meanwhile, ghrelin, the hunger hormone, may increase due to unstable blood sugar during the night. This creates powerful cravings the next morning, especially for sugar and refined carbohydrates. Many people think their cravings are caused by lack of willpower, but in reality, these cravings are often hormonally driven. Another overlooked issue is how nighttime insulin spikes disrupt growth hormone production. During deep sleep, the pituitary gland releases growth hormone, which plays a major role in fat metabolism, muscle repair, tissue healing, and cellular regeneration. But elevated insulin can blunt growth hormone release, reducing the body's ability to repair itself and burn fat overnight. Sleep quality itself may also suffer. Rapid blood sugar fluctuations during the night can trigger stress responses from the adrenal glands. If blood sugar drops too quickly after a large insulin spike, the body may release cortisol and adrenaline to stabilize glucose levels. This can lead to nighttime awakenings, racing thoughts, sweating, or restless sleep. Over time, this repeated cycle creates widespread metabolic dysfunction. The pancreas works harder, insulin resistance worsens, inflammation increases, and the body becomes more efficient at storing fat than burning it. Certain nutrient deficiencies can intensify these problems. Magnesium deficiency is strongly associated with insulin resistance and poor glucose control. Chromium deficiency may also impair insulin sensitivity, while low vitamin D levels are linked to metabolic dysfunction and increased abdominal fat accumulation. One of the most effective ways to improve nighttime fat burning is to lower insulin before sleep. Avoiding late-night snacking, reducing sugar and refined carbohydrates in the evening, increasing protein and healthy fats during dinner, and allowing several hours between the last meal and bedtime can significantly improve insulin regulation. Physical activity also helps because muscles act like glucose reservoirs. When muscles are active, they absorb glucose more efficiently, reducing the amount of insulin needed after meals. Even light evening movement can improve insulin sensitivity. When nighttime insulin levels remain low and stable, the body can finally transition into repair mode. Fat burning increases, growth hormone improves, inflammation decreases, and the metabolism becomes more efficient. This is one of the most important shifts for reducing stubborn belly fat and restoring long-term metabolic health. What if one of the biggest reasons you cannot lose belly fat has nothing to do with calories, exercise, or age, but instead comes from a hidden disruption in your sleep hormone? Many people are completely unaware that low melatonin levels can silently damage metabolism, interfere with blood sugar control, and reduce the body's ability to burn fat overnight. Most people think melatonin is simply a sleep hormone, but melatonin does far more than help you fall asleep. It acts like a metabolic regulator that influences insulin sensitivity, mitochondrial function, inflammation, fat metabolism, and the body's entire circadian rhythm. When melatonin levels become disrupted, the body begins losing its ability to properly repair and regulate itself during sleep. Melatonin is produced primarily by the pineal gland in response to darkness. Under healthy conditions, melatonin rises naturally in the evening as light exposure decreases. This hormone sends a signal to the body that it is time to enter recovery mode. During this phase, metabolism slows in a healthy way, insulin levels decrease, cellular repair activates, and the body shifts toward overnight fat burning. But modern lifestyle habits are interfering with this entire process. Exposure to blue light from phones, televisions, tablets, and bright indoor lighting at night can suppress melatonin production significantly. Even small reductions in melatonin can alter sleep quality and metabolic function. When melatonin stays low, the body struggles to regulate glucose properly during the night. This is extremely important because nighttime is when the body should naturally improve insulin sensitivity and stabilize blood sugar. But reduced melatonin can impair how cells respond to insulin, forcing the pancreas to release more insulin to control blood glucose levels. Over time, this contributes to insulin resistance, one of the primary causes of stubborn belly fat and metabolic dysfunction. When insulin resistance develops, the body becomes less capable of burning stored fat for energy. Instead, excess calories are more easily stored in adipose tissue, especially around the abdomen. Low melatonin also affects the mitochondria, which are the energy-producing structures inside the cells. Healthy mitochondria are essential for efficient fat burning and metabolic performance. Melatonin acts as a powerful antioxidant within the mitochondria, protecting them from oxidative stress and inflammation. But when melatonin levels decline, mitochondrial efficiency decreases. This means the body becomes less efficient at converting stored fat into usable energy. Fatigue increases, metabolism slows, and fat accumulation becomes more likely, particularly visceral fat surrounding the abdominal organs. Another major problem is that poor melatonin production disrupts deep sleep cycles. During deep sleep, the body releases important repair hormones, including growth hormone. Growth hormone plays a central role in tissue repair, muscle maintenance, fat metabolism, and cellular recovery. But when melatonin is suppressed, sleep quality suffers, and growth hormone release becomes impaired. As a result, the body loses one of its most important overnight fat-burning and anti-aging mechanisms. Muscle recovery declines, inflammation increases, and metabolic rate can begin slowing over time. Low melatonin may also increase cortisol activity at night. Cortisol and melatonin normally work in opposite rhythms. Melatonin should rise at night while cortisol falls. But when melatonin is suppressed, cortisol often remains elevated longer than it should. Elevated nighttime cortisol pushes the body into stress mode, raising blood sugar and promoting abdominal fat storage. This hormonal imbalance creates a dangerous metabolic environment where the body stores fat instead of burning it during sleep. The liver is also heavily affected by disrupted melatonin levels. Research has shown that poor circadian rhythm regulation may increase the risk of fatty liver accumulation and worsen glucose metabolism. Since the liver is responsible for stabilizing blood sugar and processing fats, any dysfunction in liver metabolism can rapidly affect body weight and insulin sensitivity. Nutrient deficiencies may further worsen melatonin production. Magnesium deficiency is one of the most common contributors to poor sleep quality because magnesium helps relax the nervous system and supports melatonin synthesis. Vitamin B6 also plays a role in producing neurotransmitters involved in melatonin regulation. Aging itself may naturally reduce melatonin production as well. This is one reason many adults begin struggling with sleep problems, increased belly fat, insulin resistance, and slower metabolism as they get older. One of the most effective ways to restore healthy melatonin rhythms is reducing artificial light exposure at night. Dimming indoor lights, avoiding screens before bedtime, and sleeping in a completely dark room can help support natural melatonin release. Morning sunlight exposure is equally important because it helps reset the body's circadian clock, improving nighttime melatonin production later in the evening. Maintaining stable blood sugar levels, avoiding late-night eating, reducing caffeine intake late in the day, and supporting magnesium intake through nutrition can also improve melatonin function naturally. When melatonin levels are restored, the body enters a more efficient repair state during sleep. Insulin sensitivity improves, inflammation decreases, mitochondrial function becomes stronger, and the metabolism regains its ability to burn fat more effectively overnight. What if your belly fat is not simply a weight problem, but actually a sign of chronic inflammation and hormone dysfunction happening deep inside the body every night? Many people do not realize that elevated nighttime cortisol can silently trigger inflammation, damage insulin sensitivity, slow metabolism, and force the body to store more abdominal fat over time. Cortisol is a survival hormone produced by the adrenal glands. Under normal conditions, cortisol follows a precise daily rhythm. It should rise in the morning to increase alertness and energy, then gradually decrease at night so the body can rest, repair tissues, regulate blood sugar, and enter deep sleep. But when cortisol remains elevated at night due to chronic stress, poor sleep, blood sugar instability, emotional tension, excessive caffeine, or late-night eating, the entire metabolic system becomes disrupted. Instead of entering recovery mode during sleep, the body remains trapped in a low-grade stress response. One of the first systems affected is inflammation control. Although cortisol has anti-inflammatory effects in short bursts, chronically elevated cortisol eventually creates the opposite effect. Over time, the body becomes less responsive to cortisol's regulatory function, allowing inflammatory chemicals called cytokines to rise throughout the body. This creates chronic low-grade inflammation, which is one of the most overlooked causes of stubborn belly fat and metabolic disease. Inflammation directly interferes with insulin signaling. Under healthy conditions, insulin binds to receptors on cells and allows glucose to enter where it can be used for energy. But inflammatory chemicals can block these insulin receptors, forcing the pancreas to release larger amounts of insulin to control blood sugar levels. This condition is known as insulin resistance. Once insulin resistance develops, the body becomes extremely efficient at storing fat while becoming less efficient at burning it. Fat cells around the abdomen are especially sensitive to cortisol and insulin, which is why chronic stress and inflammation often lead to visceral belly fat accumulation. Visceral fat is far more dangerous than fat stored under the skin. This type of fat surrounds internal organs such as the liver, pancreas, and intestines. It also acts like an active endocrine organ, releasing even more inflammatory chemicals into the bloodstream. This creates a vicious cycle where inflammation worsens insulin resistance, and insulin resistance promotes more belly fat storage. The liver is one of the organs most heavily affected by elevated nighttime cortisol and chronic inflammation. Cortisol stimulates the liver to release glucose into the bloodstream, even during periods when the body does not need extra energy. Over time, this repeated glucose release forces insulin levels to remain elevated more frequently. At the same time, inflammation can contribute to fatty liver accumulation. Excess fat stored inside the liver interferes with normal metabolic processes, including glucose regulation, fat metabolism, and detoxification pathways. A sluggish, fatty liver can significantly slow metabolic efficiency and worsen weight gain around the abdomen. The thyroid gland may also become affected. Chronic inflammation can reduce the conversion of thyroid hormone T4 into its active form T3. Since T3 is responsible for regulating metabolic rate, low-active thyroid hormone levels may contribute to fatigue, slower calorie burning, cold intolerance, and difficulty losing weight. Many people experiencing chronic stress-related inflammation notice symptoms beyond weight gain. These can include sugar cravings, poor sleep quality, fatigue, brain fog, high blood pressure, and increased hunger late at night. These symptoms are often connected through the same hormonal pathways involving cortisol, insulin, inflammation, and blood sugar instability. Sleep disruption makes the problem even worse. Elevated nighttime cortisol interferes with deep sleep cycles and suppresses growth hormone release. Growth hormone is essential for tissue repair, muscle maintenance, and fat metabolism during sleep. Without adequate deep sleep, the body loses one of its most important metabolic recovery systems. Nutrient deficiencies can intensify this inflammatory state. Magnesium deficiency is extremely common in people with chronic stress because magnesium is rapidly depleted during prolonged cortisol activation. Magnesium plays a vital role in nervous system relaxation, blood sugar regulation, and inflammation control. Low vitamin D levels are also strongly associated with increased inflammation and poor immune regulation. Vitamin D affects insulin sensitivity, hormone balance, and immune function throughout the body. Deficiencies may worsen metabolic dysfunction and increase abdominal fat storage. Highly processed foods, excess sugar, refined carbohydrates, alcohol, and poor sleep habits all contribute to chronic inflammatory stress. Even repeated nighttime spikes in blood sugar can trigger inflammatory responses that continue damaging metabolism over time. Reducing nighttime cortisol and inflammation requires restoring the body's natural recovery rhythm. Stabilizing blood sugar levels, avoiding late-night eating, improving sleep quality, increasing magnesium-rich foods, reducing processed carbohydrates, and supporting healthy circadian rhythms can significantly improve hormone balance. Regular movement also helps because exercise improves insulin sensitivity and lowers inflammatory markers when performed consistently and appropriately. When cortisol levels normalize and inflammation decreases, the metabolism begins functioning more efficiently again. Insulin sensitivity improves, the liver becomes healthier, thyroid function stabilizes, sleep quality improves, and the body can finally begin accessing stored fat for energy instead of continuously storing it around the abdomen. What if the real reason your body refuses to burn fat at night is because you are missing one of the most powerful recovery hormones in the human body? Many people focus only on calories and exercise, but they completely overlook the hormone that controls overnight repair, muscle recovery, metabolic balance, and fat burning during sleep. That hormone is growth hormone, and poor sleep can dramatically reduce its production. Growth hormone is produced primarily by the pituitary gland, especially during deep sleep. This hormone is essential for maintaining lean muscle mass, supporting tissue repair, regulating blood sugar, improving fat metabolism, and helping the body recover from daily stress. While growth hormone is often associated with physical growth in children, it remains critically important throughout adulthood for metabolic health and body composition. The problem is that modern sleep disruption is silently suppressing growth hormone production in millions of people. Deep sleep is the stage where the body performs most of its overnight repair work. During this phase, growth hormone levels naturally rise and activate fat-burning pathways throughout the body. But if sleep becomes fragmented, shortened, or shallow, growth hormone release declines significantly. This creates a metabolic environment where the body becomes less efficient at burning stored fat and more likely to accumulate fat around the abdomen. One reason this happens is because growth hormone directly stimulates lipolysis, the process where stored fat is broken down into fatty acids for energy. When growth hormone levels are healthy, the body can access fat reserves more effectively during fasting and sleep. But when growth hormone production decreases, fat metabolism slows down. At the same time, low growth hormone may contribute to muscle loss. Muscle tissue is one of the most metabolically active tissues in the body. The more muscle mass a person maintains, the more efficiently the body burns calories and regulates blood sugar. But inadequate growth hormone makes it harder to preserve lean muscle, especially during aging or chronic stress. This shift toward lower muscle mass and higher fat storage can significantly slow metabolic rate over time. Poor sleep also affects insulin regulation. Growth hormone works closely with insulin to help maintain metabolic balance. When sleep quality declines and growth hormone production drops, insulin sensitivity often worsens. Cells become less responsive to insulin, forcing the pancreas to produce larger amounts of insulin to control blood sugar. Chronically elevated insulin then blocks fat burning and promotes abdominal fat storage. This is one reason people who sleep poorly often experience stronger cravings, increased hunger, and weight gain even without major dietary changes. Hormonal balance becomes disrupted at multiple levels simultaneously. Sleep deprivation also affects appetite hormones directly. Ghrelin, the hormone responsible for stimulating hunger, tends to rise when sleep is inadequate. Meanwhile, leptin, the hormone that signals fullness and satiety, decreases. This hormonal imbalance increases cravings for sugar, processed carbohydrates, and calorie-dense foods. As a result, poor sleep not only reduces overnight fat burning, but also increases daytime overeating. Another major factor is cortisol. When sleep quality declines, cortisol levels often remain elevated longer than they should. High nighttime cortisol suppresses deep sleep and interferes with growth hormone release. Elevated cortisol also increases blood glucose and inflammation, further worsening insulin resistance and abdominal fat accumulation. This creates a dangerous hormonal cycle where stress hormones rise while recovery hormones decline. The liver is also deeply connected to this process. During healthy sleep, the liver helps regulate glucose production, detoxification, and fat metabolism. But chronic sleep disruption can impair liver function and increase the risk of fatty liver accumulation. Fatty liver disease is strongly associated with insulin resistance, inflammation, and obesity. Mitochondrial function may decline as well. Mitochondria are responsible for producing cellular energy. During deep restorative sleep, the body repairs damaged mitochondria and improves energy efficiency. But chronic sleep deprivation increases oxidative stress and reduces mitochondrial performance, leading to fatigue and slower metabolism. Nutrient deficiencies can worsen poor sleep and low growth hormone production. Magnesium deficiency is extremely common and can interfere with nervous system relaxation, sleep quality, and muscle recovery. Magnesium also helps regulate cortisol and supports deeper sleep cycles. Low zinc levels may affect pituitary function and hormone production, while vitamin D deficiency has been linked to poor sleep quality, muscle weakness, and impaired metabolic health. One of the most harmful habits for growth hormone production is eating large meals or consuming sugar close to bedtime. Elevated insulin levels suppress growth hormone release because insulin and growth hormone operate in opposite metabolic states. When insulin stays high at night, the body shifts toward energy storage instead of repair and fat burning. Improving sleep quality is one of the most powerful metabolic strategies available. Maintaining a consistent sleep schedule, reducing blue light exposure at night, lowering stress levels, avoiding heavy late-night meals, and supporting magnesium intake can significantly improve deep sleep and growth hormone production. Physical activity during the day also enhances sleep quality and supports healthy hormone balance. Even moderate exercise improves insulin sensitivity, lowers stress hormones, and increases the body's ability to enter restorative sleep phases. When deep sleep improves, the body begins restoring its natural metabolic rhythm. Growth hormone increases, insulin sensitivity improves, inflammation decreases, muscle recovery becomes stronger, and the body regains its ability to burn stored fat efficiently during the night instead of continuously storing it around the abdomen.